with no further ado from me, I will introduce Paul Clark, who is one of the organizers of tonight's event, who will introduce our guest. Paul.
Recovering from a broken ankle, so I limp around a little bit, and but the candidate and a bunch of her supporters walked around Main Street from City Hall down to Alex and Martha's Exchange, where we had a lovely lunch. During that time, the candidate met and spoke with many people, including Democrats, who she just enraptured. As I look around this audience, I see many, many people who have attended Republican events this year. Most of us have gone to see every candidate we can. I've seen everybody but Trump. And I may miss that one. I don't know. Who knows? You know, in talking about candidates, you want integrity, you want forcefulness, you want personality, you want intelligence. And when the candidate met me at Fitton back in April, she walked up to me and shook my hand so hard I thought she was going to break it, looked me in the eye and said, "Mr. Clark, I'm running for president, and perhaps you could see your way to help me." So, without further ado, I'm not going to introduce her as a woman. I'm going to introduce her as the next president of the United States, Carly Fiorina.
Thank you so much. Paul, thank you so much. And I want to begin as well. By the way, do you guys mind, could I take my shoes off? I'm sinking into the grass here. I had to do an ed board this morning, so you know I had to kind of dress the part. But in any event, first, Terry and Steve, where are you? Right here. Thank you. Oh, there you are, right in the front row. Thank you so very much for opening up your beautiful home. It's a big commitment to let all these people in your backyard, so thank you for doing that. And I was at Jack Tully's today, so Jack and Brenda, thank you very much for your support and help. And we used Jack's conference room, and I have to say he's kind of a full-service auto dealer. Maybe you don't know what I mean, but what I mean is he showed up with Coke, he showed up with water, and then he showed up because I had a spot on my suit with a can of K2R and a roll of paper towels. So, you know, he's got it all going on. Thank you very much. And of course, what can I say about Paul and Barbara? Where is Barbara? There you are, in the back. What a great day today. What a nice walk. You know, I have to tell you that when I come here to New Hampshire, one of the issues that I have learned a lot about that's touched me is the problem of heroin addiction here. It touches me because it touches so many lives, but also because we lost a daughter to addiction. And I met two young men today on the walk that I can't get out of my mind, actually. One was 25, one was 26. They were kind of rough looking, sitting on a bench. They had a lot of tattoos. I went over and said, "Gentlemen, how are you this afternoon?" And one of them said, "Well, we just got out of an AA meeting." So I talked with them for quite a while. One was 25. He told me he was a felon, so I presume he had some drug addiction issue. Another was 26. He was recovering from heroin addiction. And so I encouraged them to keep going every single day. We can come back and talk to that, but the point is that every time I come here to New Hampshire, I meet people who touch me. And one of the things that touches me the most about New Hampshire is how seriously you take your citizenship responsibilities. You come to these events. I mean, how many people have I met? Sometimes I have to tell you, honestly, it's frustrating. I'll have people come up and say, "I've seen you 10 times and I still can't make up my mind." It's like, oh, come on. But on the other hand, good for you. You're taking your citizen responsibilities seriously, and I think you're a role model for the rest of the nation, honestly. I'm also so encouraged by the endorsements and the support that I've gotten. And so I don't usually use notes, but I don't want to miss anyone. Representing Nashua, the people who have endorsed me, Sharon Tamposi, Dr. Kevin Moriarty, and Carol Holden. I haven't seen Carol here, but maybe she came in late. In any event, I'm very proud of all of the endorsements that I've gained. Our campaign launched about 64 days ago. When I launched this campaign, less than 4% of New Hampshire voters had ever heard my name. And now we're moving up in the polls, as you know. We're gaining in both the quantity of endorsements and, even more importantly, the quality of our endorsements. And I'm so encouraged here in New Hampshire because, of course, because you take your citizenship responsibilities seriously, you're not much impressed with name ID or how much money people have raised. You want to know who people are and what they think and what they're going to believe. So thank you for that encouragement and support. I'm running for president because I think we are at a pivotal time in our nation's history. And it sort of was crystallized for me by another New Hampshire citizen. Last summer, I was giving a speech at a Rotary Club at the Seacoast. And I was talking about human potential, the only limitless resource we have in the world, the only resource we need to solve every problem, and a resource, human potential, that is so often not fully tapped. And at the end of my speech, this gentleman came up to me and he said, "You know, Carly, we don't think of ourselves as a nation of limitless possibility anymore." And I thought how true that is and how sad that is. Because this has always been a nation defined by its possibilities. And so when we stop thinking about ourselves as a nation of limitless possibility, then we are losing the core of who we are. I know why people feel that way. There's a lot that makes people feel that way, and that's why we're at a pivotal point. When I was a little girl, my mother said to me one Sunday morning, "What you are is God's gift to you. What you make of yourself is your gift to God." And as I have gone throughout my life, I have learned that everybody has God-given gifts, regardless of their circumstances, regardless of who they are or what they look like. Everybody has God-given gifts. Everybody has potential, usually far more than they realize. I've traveled, lived, worked, done charity work all over the world, in every continent, in most countries in the world. And everywhere I have gone, regardless of the circumstances, here or there, I see people with God-given gifts and lots of potential who are trying to move forward and build dignity and purpose and meaning into their lives. So why is it that if human potential is really spread evenly around the planet, why is it that in this country so many more things have been possible for so many more people? Why is it that this is the only country in the world, and it is? This is the only country in the world where a young woman like me could start her business career in the middle of a deep recession, typing and filing and answering the phones for a 9-person real estate firm, go on over the course of 2 decades and become the chief executive officer of the largest technology company in the world, and run for the presidency of the United States. That is only possible in the United States of America. Why is that only possible here? I think it's possible here and only here because our founders knew what my mother taught me. Our founders knew that everybody has God-given gifts. Our founders knew that everybody has potential. And they founded a nation on truly a radical idea at the time, and it's visionary still. And that idea was this, that here in this nation, you have a right to fulfill your potential. It is what they meant when they said a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then they said, and here was the radical part, then they said, that right comes from God and cannot be taken away by man or government. And so, while we have worked hard to become, as Lincoln once said, a more perfect union, while we have worked hard to make sure that that right extends to everybody, and we still have work to do in that regard, nevertheless, more things have been more possible for more people from more places here than anywhere else on the face of the planet. And yet, this pivotal moment that we have come to in our nation's history. This pivotal moment where a man in New Hampshire can come up to me and say, we do not think of ourselves as a nation of limitless possibility anymore. Why is that? Because we are wrapping too many people's lives, tangling them up in webs of dependence. I have met so many of these people who are in desperate circumstances and yet who want to move forward with their lives, but we do not make it easy. We tangle them up. We discourage them from moving forward. Or the fact that we are destroying economic opportunity for too many people in this nation. You know what is the engine of economic growth in this country and always has been? Small businesses, family-owned businesses, community-based businesses. Most Americans get their start the way I did, in a little company. My husband, Frank, started out as a tow truck driver in a family-owned auto body shop in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's how most people start, in little, small, family-owned, community-based businesses. So why do I say we are crushing opportunity? Those small businesses create 2/3 of the new jobs in this country. They employ half the people. They are the engine of economic growth. And for the first time, small businesses might get bigger. Jack's business started small, it got bigger. Your business started small, it's getting bigger, but you got to start. What are we doing now in this nation? For the first time in U.S. history, we are destroying more businesses than we are creating. Think about that. And it's not big business that's getting destroyed, folks. Big business is doing just fine. Big business, in fact, is getting bigger. And why is that? Because when big government gets bigger, more powerful, more costly, more complicated, more complex, guess what? Only the big can deal with it. That's called crony capitalism. When government gets bigger and bigger, what happens? The big, the powerful, the wealthy, the well-connected do better and better. And the small, the powerless, the community-based, they get crushed. You think that's a harsh way of saying it? Let me give you a few facts. I said we're destroying more businesses than we're creating for the first time in U.S. history. That is true. But think about what happened with Dodd-Frank. Remember, Dodd-Frank was still supposed to solve the financial crisis, but in reality, what we did with that law is we took 10 banks too big to fail on Wall Street. There are now 5 even bigger banks with even more power. And thousands of community banks have gone out of business. And that matters because community banks are the people that give folks in the community a chance, a mortgage, a loan for the business. And so those banks are getting crushed. The thing is, this has been going on for a long time. 82% of the American people now believe we have a professional political class of both parties that cares more about the preservation of its power, its position, and its privilege than on getting anything done. I agree with them. And let us be honest. How long has government been getting bigger and more powerful? 50 years. How long has every single government agency been given more money? About 50 years. How long have we been talking about securing the border? 25 years. How long have we been talking about tax reform? Decades, not years. How long have we been talking about, gee, we need to reform the VA? How long has the VA been a stain on our nation's honor? Not a couple years, a couple decades. How can it be true that the IRS says this past tax season, sorry, we can't answer taxpayer questions and take phone calls unless we're given more money, and yet the government keeps spending more money? How is it, how can it be true that we don't have enough money to repair our roads and our bridges, and yet the government keeps spending more money every year? You know, at political season, especially presidential politics, great ideas come out. Everybody talks about what has to get done, and yet somehow it never gets done. And of course, we have example after example after example of government ineptitude. It's another strong word. But you know, TSA failing 96% of the time, ineptitude. Today, we heard the news. Remember the data breach at the Office of Personnel Management? I chaired the advisory board at the CIA for several years. I've held the highest clearances available to a civilian. I will tell you with certainty that we have known that the Chinese are trying to hack into our federal government databases and systems for at least 12 years. And yet, this huge data breach happens, despite the fact that the Inspector General told the Office of Personnel Management that they were at risk, asked them to shut down certain systems. They didn't shut them down. And today we learn that 21.7 million citizens' social security numbers are in the hands of the Chinese. 19.7 million people who got a security clearance, I'm one of them, have all of their information in the hands of the Chinese. That is ineptitude, ladies and gentlemen. We have the best technology in the world, we have the best people in the world, but somehow in the federal government we didn't get it together to prevent that from happening. And remember when Target was breached? Remember Target's breach? You know, the CEO lost their job. You think anyone's going to lose their job at the Office of Personnel Management? Who is going to be held accountable? You know, it reminds me of the difference between management and leadership. You know what managers are? Managers are people who accept the status quo. They do the best they can within the existing system. We've got a lot of politicians, ladies and gentlemen, who are good people, I'm sure, who perhaps have tried hard to be fine public servants, but we have a lot of people who have been managing within the status quo. Leaders understand their job is to challenge the status quo. Margaret Thatcher, a woman that I admire tremendously, once said to her countrymen and women, "I will not manage the decline of a great nation." And ladies and gentlemen, we right now are facing an opportunity where we either are going to continue as we have been and manage the decline of a great nation, or we are going to elect a leader who will say, as citizens, we are going to unlock the potential of this great nation for once and for all. And let me tell you why I say as citizens. Because you know there's some really basic things we have to do. It's not rocket science. We have to do them though. And sometimes a leader's job is to ask the right question and a citizen's job is to answer. So you know what I would do? Remember, let me just say, we know that politicians respond to pressure. Remember when the VA scandal broke, Arizona wait times, what happened? The American people were outraged. And because they were so outraged, they put huge pressure on Congress. So guess what Congress did? They reacted. And in 3 short weeks, record time, there was a bipartisan agreement reached that you could fire the top 400 senior executives at the VA. President Obama signed that bill. It was a breakthrough. Of course, only one person's been fired. But nevertheless, it was a breakthrough. Let us hold people accountable instead of just letting them sit in jobs no matter what they do. So, you know what I would do? I think we need to know where every single dollar is being spent. I'd go into the Oval Office regularly, and I'd ask people, citizens, please take out your smartphones. I'd like to ask you a couple questions. Do you think we ought to be able to fire senior executives in the federal government who fail to do their jobs? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. That technology exists. Technology is the greatest tool for democratization ever devised, and I will use it to re-engage citizens in the process of their government. Here's another question. Do you think it actually is important that we know how our money is being spent? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Do you think it's okay that you can sit in the federal government and watch pornography all day long and earn the same pay, pension, and benefits as somebody trying to do a good job? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. Do you think that we ought to force every single agency to justify every single dollar every single year? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no. You would vote, and so would many, many other American citizens, and the system would move. You know, when I was at Hewlett-Packard, I led through a very difficult time. The dot-com bust, post 9/11, the worst technology recession in 25 years. It was a tough time, and tough calls had to be made. And yet many of the companies we competed against at the beginning of my tenure didn't exist at the end of my tenure, and yet we were going strong. We doubled the size of the business to almost $90 billion. We quadrupled the growth rate, we quadrupled cash flow, we tripled innovation to 11 patents a day, and importantly, we went from lagging behind in every product category and every market segment to leading in every product category and every market segment. And at the end of that 6-year period, I got fired in a boardroom brawl that played out over 2 weeks. Why? Because when you lead, you must challenge the status quo, and when you challenge the status quo, you make enemies. It is the nature of leadership. You cannot please everyone all the time, and the power to preserve the status quo is strong. It's why so few people lead, I think. And yet leadership is required now, and nowhere is leadership more required than in the world today. When we are not leading, the world is a very dangerous and a very tragic place. The truth is, I know more world leaders on the stage today than anyone running, with the possible exception of Hillary Clinton. But I did not do photo ops. I had meetings. A private meeting with Bibi Netanyahu on more than one occasion, a private meeting with King Abdullah of Jordan, a private meeting with Vladimir Putin, a private meeting with Angela Merkel, a private meeting with David Cameron, a private meeting with the King of Saudi, a private meeting with the head of the Chinese government. The point is, I know the people in the world, and our allies do not think they can count on us, and our adversaries don't much care what we do right now. So I would do a couple things on day one. Day one, I would place a phone call to Bibi Netanyahu to reassure him that the United States of America will stand with the state of Israel. But that call, it's not just a call to Bibi Netanyahu, because every ally we have, including our Arab allies who don't always agree with Bibi Netanyahu, are watching how we treat Israel. And they conclude, wow, the United States is treating Israel this way. What does our friendship mean? The second call I would make would be to the supreme leader of Iran. Realistically, he might not take my call. He would get the message. And the message would be, I don't care what deal John Kerry signs. I don't care what deal President Obama signs. I hope very much Congress will stop the deal, because it's clear this is going to be a very bad deal. But regardless of what the deal is, the new deal is this. Until you submit to every nuclear facility, every uranium enrichment facility you have, to full, unfettered, anytime, anywhere inspections, we, the United States of America, will make it as difficult as possible for you to move money around the global financial system. We can do that. We don't need anyone's permission. We don't need anyone's collaboration to do that.
Thank you. I actually would not call Vladimir Putin. We have talked way too much to him and to his foreign minister. But I would begin immediately rebuilding the Sixth Fleet. I would begin immediately rebuilding the missile defense program in Poland. I would begin immediately conducting very aggressive military exercises in the Baltics. And you know, until 4 days ago, I was saying I would arm the Ukrainians. But about 2 days ago, I learned that the Ukrainians are now being helped by the Chechens and some elements of ISIS, which is a demonstration of the fact that when people fail to lead and fail to act, dangerous situations become more dangerous, not less dangerous.
And I would immediately hold a Camp David summit with our Arab allies. Not to talk them into a bad deal with Iran, but to say to them, how can we help you defeat ISIS? Because our Arab allies know this is their fight. Remember King Abdullah of Jordan, a man I've known for a long time? He was in this country when the Jordanian pilot was burned alive, and he was here because he was asking us for bombs and materiel. We haven't provided it. The Egyptians are asking us to share intelligence. We're not. The Kurds have been asking us to arm them for 3 years. We aren't. The Kuwaitis have been attacked. The Qataris, the Bahrainis, the Saudis, the Egyptians. I know most of these leaders. They know it's their fight, but they expect leadership and resolve and support from the United States of America. One of you, I'm going to draw this to a close so I can take your questions, but a couple of you, when I came in this evening, said, oh, you know, I met you at the First of the Nation Summit. That's where I met Paul. And so I remember standing on a mound of mulch outside the in high heels maybe that day too, but in any event, on a mound of mulch, I was doing a television interview, a national television interview. And I was asked a question on that interview. The question was, did I think a woman's hormones prevented her from serving in the Oval Office? So ladies, here's a test. Can you think of a single instance in which a man's judgment might have been clouded by hormones? Including in the White House. Hillary Clinton must not be president of the United States. But not because she's a woman. Hillary Clinton must not be president of the United States because she is not trustworthy. Because she lacks a track record of leadership. And because the policies she will pursue are bad for the potential of this nation. But you know what? Realistically, we need a nominee who is going to ask her all the hard questions that no one else is asking her. I don't know how many of you saw her interview with CNN. She was never asked a single question. I mean, I thought Breonna Taylor did pretty well, but she was not asked a single question about her tenure as Secretary of State. Not about Benghazi, not about the fact that Libya has now turned into a failed state and a haven for terrorists, not about why would you think, having met Vladimir Putin, I've met him, why would you think a gimmicky red reset button would work? Why would you call President Bashar al-Assad of Syria a butcher, if ever there was one, a positive reformer? Why would you declare victory in Iraq in 2011? No, she wasn't asked any of those questions. Guess what, folks? I'll ask them. I'll ask every single one. We need somebody who can win this job because we need to win it. And I will not falter. But we also need somebody who can do this job at this pivotal point in our nation's history. So for a moment, think about what it takes to do this job now. It takes someone who actually understands how the economy works and what it takes to get it going again. It takes somebody who understands how the world works and who's in the world. It takes somebody who understands how bureaucracies work, because our federal government has become a giant, bloated, corrupt, inept, powerful, complicated bureaucracy that is crushing the potential of this nation. We need somebody who understands technology, because technology is a tool. It's a tool that can be used to re-engage people in the process of their government, and it's a weapon that's being used against us. And we ought to be able to counter every single cyber attack there is. For heaven's sakes, we have the most sophisticated technology and the most sophisticated people in the world in this field. And finally, I think it takes somebody who understands what leadership is. Leadership requires sometimes tough calls in tough times for which you are prepared to stand and be held to account. It requires someone who is unafraid to challenge the status quo. And it requires, I think, somebody who understands that the highest calling of leadership is not the acquisition of power or title or position or prestige. The highest calling of leadership is to unlock potential in others. And now we need a leader who will unlock the potential with the help of the citizens of this great nation. We need a leader who will unlock the potential of this nation again. And so as I travel throughout New Hampshire and throughout this country, I think always of what we can be, what we will be, because every wound is self-inflicted. Every problem can be solved. We have everything we need. We have the human potential of the citizens of this nation. But what can we be? And so I think of two of the most powerful symbols of our nation's democracy, Lady Liberty and Lady Justice, because I think when we think about them, we know what we should be. Think about Lady Liberty. She stands tall and strong. She is clear-eyed. She is resolute. She doesn't shield her eyes from the realities of the world. She faces out into the world, as America always must. And she holds her torch high, because she knows she is a beacon of hope in a very troubled world. And Lady Justice, She holds a sword in one hand because she's a fighter. She's a warrior. For the values and the principles that have made this nation great, she holds a scale in the other hand. And I think with that scale, she is reminding us that all of us are equal in the eyes of God. And therefore, all of us must be equal in the eyes of the law and the government, powerful and powerless alike. And she wears a blindfold. And I think with that blindfold, she is saying that it must be true in this nation, in this century. It must be true. It can be true. That it really doesn't matter who you are. And it doesn't matter what you look like. And it doesn't matter what your circumstances. It doesn't matter how you start. Here, in this nation, every American's life can be filled with the possibilities that come with their God-given gifts, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Croc TV.